Thank you. Dear JCPS, the topic of my speech is listen to stakeholders. The longer version is listen to the stakeholders that are most affected by our policies. They've been telling you the things that need to change in our district. We need to listen to parents of color. We need to listen to mothers of color. There was a video that just recently went viral last week of a parent at one of our elementary schools. That is the same elementary school that speakers came and spoke to you last year in the in the spring of May, about an election at their school that had taken place that was manipulated by administration. These parents have been telling you about bias that exists in their schools, and we need to listen to them. These are the same parents that have been shut out of PTAs and site-based decision-making councils. They are the parents that are concerned about their students with police presence in their schools. They are affected by the student assignment plan the most. We need to listen to them. We also need to listen to Black educators. In your folder, in addition to the sheets that I gave to Angie, you each have a manila folder in front of you with some samples of another elementary school in our district that a staff member has been targeted for simply bringing up and trying to educate her school community about bias that exists. And instead of listening to her concerns, she's been targeted and experienced retribution. So there is a copy of her response in your folder. It's clear that the groups that exist in order to represent these stakeholders have not been speaking up for this most marginalized community. So we have to be intentional and make space for them. We need to listen to our maintenance employees. There's a class action lawsuit right now, and our maintenance workers have conveyed that based on the color of their skin, they're not being promoted as quickly as other coworkers. And many of them still bear the title helper. I'm sorry, but that is an offensive title for somebody that's been in a career for as long as many of these maintenance workers have. There's a rumor that there's a blacklist in HR, for example, too. We have to remove these barriers and make space for equity across the district, and listening to our families, our stakeholders of color in particular, because they are closest to the pain, as G2 Brown says. Our students, many of our students came here last year and spoke to you about a principal who had made some derogatory comments. And fortunately, the district did address that, but my understanding is there's still things taking place in that school. So please look at your folder and be aware of that as well.
Thank you so much for being here this evening. Our next speaker is Braden O'Bannon. Braden O'Bannon, who wants to talk to us about school field trip. Welcome, Braden, and thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, everyone. My name is Braden O'Bannon. Yesterday, I handed Mr. Polio a letter concerning a field trip. I was invited back to share this idea with you tonight. I would like to read it to you now. I am a student at the J. Graham Brown School, and I would like to request that all middle and high school students in Jefferson County Public Schools be allowed to view the film Just Mercy. I recently went to see the movie, and I believe that the middle and high school students would benefit from seeing this movie. It shows the effects of racism. This movie also shows how poverty can affect people and how they respond differently depending on the racial and economic status that the community has given them. This also shows how a biased and unjust system can be changed. For me, it gave me a much deeper learning experience than I have ever received from textbooks or lectures from teachers. It showed me truly what unmerciful and unfair judgment is. This movie also showed how perseverance can lead to a better outcome. Please give this request serious thought and consideration. Yesterday, I took Mr. Marshall's suggestion about submitting my request to the principal and counselor at my school so that there could possibly be a snowball effect between other schools. But when I went to request the time to speak with the principal, one of the clerical personnel told me that my request should include a solution to the issues of cost and transportation before I present my enlightenment to a community of people my age. I ensure that someone has a better insight on how to solve the problem of transportation for my time. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Braden, for being here this evening. Good job. Our next speaker is Kenya Jennings. Kenya Jennings, and the topic is security.
Good evening. My name is Kenya Jennings. I'm just gonna basically go over what me and my sons are going through after the situation at Turquoise. Cameron is still having a hard time as far as getting back into school on a regular system, trusting teachers. He knows that not everyone is out to get him, sort of say, but because of how the situation was handled, he's having a hard time confiding in teachers that necessarily can't really relate to what he's going through. I also have a 16-year-old son who's looking at the situation of what his brother has went through and how the situation was handled, and he's having a hard time trusting teachers and any kind of security personnel. And I've spoke to them about the SROs, and they don't agree with them. They don't feel like having an armed officer in their school is gonna protect them from any incidents. They feel like the officer is gonna already have a mind frame of it's white against black and brown, basically. And what I really want is just somewhere where they'll be safe at school, but they have the option to go and talk to a counselor or get some kind of mediation area where if something happens and they just need to have a cool off moment. I feel like also the teachers should have some kind of disciplinary training. The teacher that had the incident with Cameron, assaulted Cameron, she is basically off just living her life. She's fine, and then she's quit, and my son still has to go through the situation every day. He lives it every day when he goes to school, when a new student is transferring into the school, when a teacher is coming in. They already looking at him. They already looking at him and have a mind frame of my son is a monster, and he's not. He felt like in that time frame of when the situation happened, he had to defend himself. And I just feel like teachers would take the training more seriously or give them something that they can use besides putting their hands on our babies. Thank you.
Thank you for being here this evening. Our next speaker is Chanel Helm. Chanel Helm is going to talk to us about SROs. Welcome.
Thank you. Hey, y'all. It's been a minute, but technically my daughter's supposed to be in bed 21 minutes ago, right? This meeting takes so long. I want to express how disappointed I am that there's an acceptance of having a security force at an educational institution. When we're talking about what is going on with Kenya, what someone else came up here to say, we need to address exactly what it is. I applaud, starting the racial equity task force and now this committee, and it's working, but I'm a movement organizer. And if something goes down that just went down just now, a young 16-year-old boy went to go see his brother at the hospital. He got shot in the head. He's there. He got hemmed up by the police. I have to go into motion right away, and I have to know what to do. And if anybody is panicking, I have to go into another set of behavior so that I can make sure that no one else gets hurt. That's a training that all movement organizers have. Do we get a certificate? Do we get an award, a little glass jar or whatever, vacation time? No, we don't. We have to prepare and know that any moment, at any time, here in this room or outside of here, that I would have to do that again. We expect everybody that is at JCPS, inside these schools, inside school communities, actual communities, organized communities, to be able to go into motion at any time. What happened to Cameron, what is happening to several students right now, several parents couldn't make it here tonight, and what is taking place around the narrative of wanting SROs is really troubling to me. I'm going to send you what Advancement Project just sent to us again. We just had a meeting in December. We are formulating our bi-national campaign, and we are doubling down on police-free schools. It's enough. It really is. It's tiring. Kenya just went through the criminal justice system for the first time in her life for her son. That's scary. It's also very racist. The entire system and its entire makeup of policing is extremely racist. These children need to leave their homes they may not even return to that evening, from policing neighborhoods to go to school where they will be policed. What does that feel like? Have you ever been judged and unjudged unfairly and continually day in and day out? That creates a type of trauma. Kentucky has the most traumatized kids in the nation. That's what we're sitting with. We have a lot of trauma-sensitive schools and things like that, and a lot of these children are children. They can't mold their behavior due to a situation. They can't act the way that I can act and be trained in the way that I can, but adults can. And our schools are filled with them. And they should be given the talents and the training to do that instead of fearing children. 3/5 of our children are Black that are arrested out of 276 students last year, 2017, 2018. They were Black. That's what we fear. That's a fear I have on my 7-year-old son every day that I send him to King Elementary. Every day. I shouldn't have to fear whether my child is coming home or not when I send him to school. It's not a group of people who fear that. We entered the school buildings in the 50s with police officers, with National Guard, with the Army. They are still there. We are still going to prison. It doesn't end well for us. And now we have a legislator out in the middle of Kentucky somewhere urging the only school district to arm police officers that they do not have. That is racism. And we need to address that and call it for what it is. And so I'm asking you to make the bold decision, and that decision is to either cancel this security force and look at the beautiful ways that we can train our adults, that we can help our children learn to live together and mold communities that are safe, not build security forces. It's not what I send my children to go to school for. Thank you.
Thank you for being here this evening. Our last speaker is Rita Ward, and she's speaking about security. Rita Ward. Welcome, Ms. Ward.
I have a couple of articles, can I?
Mm-hmm. Yes, please.
Good evening, Board, Superintendent Polio. My name's Rita Ward. I'm a local attorney, and I do education advocacy. And I want to talk about police officers in school. Sometimes when I think about police officers in school and talking about it, it feels like a conversation about climate change. It doesn't matter what the research says, people are going to believe what they believe, right? Anyway, so I was reading an article recently that the author stated that in the years since a shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida that killed 17 people and wounded 5, the reaction by both state and federal legislatures has largely followed the pattern of past mass shootings. Increased spending on policing and security equipment in schools that research shows does not make students safer, and that disproportionately harms non-white, disabled, and queer students. Since Parkland, there's been a lot of discussion from government entities around increasing law enforcement presence in schools, and that's unfortunate. It doesn't help students, and there are better ways to create safe environments, says Mark Schindler, the director of the Justice Policy Institute, a nonprofit that advocates for criminal justice reform. School suspensions and expulsions have increased fivefold since 1980, an increase that has come with a decades-long increase in school policing. Disciplinary proceedings initiated by SROs, as with the justice system outside of schools, are implemented more harshly and more frequently with students of color. Not only are Black, Latino, and low-income students punished at higher rates than their whiter and wealthier peers, but they're also more likely to be arrested. Disabled students, a 2016 American Civil Liberties Union report on California schools found, are 3 times more likely to be arrested than their peers. School policing is still very disproportionately harming students of color, students with learning disabilities, and the students who identified as LGBTQ, says Christopher Mallett at Cleveland State University, whose research focuses on juvenile justice and schools. I once represented a student with autism at a JCPS high school. He left school without permission and then couldn't get back into the school and was upset. So he picked up some rocks and started throwing the rocks at the door. A police officer came up and ordered him to stop. When he didn't stop, the officer started to pull out his gun. He has autism. Luckily, an officer showed up who knew the boy and his problems and told the other officer to put his gun up. Research shows that a heavy police presence in schools actually has the effect of making kids feel less safe. The answer for JCPS student safety is not police with guns, but adults who care about them and help them learn how to create the safe environment we all desire. A school system that is already fighting disproportionality and discipline should seek to avoid additional measures that will surely increase it.
Thank you, Ms. Ward, for being here this evening. That completes the speakers for this evening, so we will go back to the agenda items, and there are 2 action items. I will turn it over to Dr. Polio. The items involve student enrollment projections and school allocation standards, but I will let Dr. Polio introduce the items. Thank you to the speakers that were here this evening. Dr. Polio.
Thank you, Chair Porter and board members. We will be providing